Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Aging Smart. Today we have a very interesting guest. She's going to talk to us a little bit about something called death doulas. That is a very strange phrase. When I first heard it, I said, I have to know more about this. Today we're going to be speaking with Lissa Bradford. So in just 1 second. Today we have Lissa Bradford. She has a lot of letters to her name, a lot of letters in the beginning and a lot of letters after her name. When I first met her, I was kind of overwhelmed by the alphabet. So I'd like to welcome Lissa to the show today. Lissa, how are you doing?
Thank you so much. Doing well and grateful to be here.
Oh, so grateful to have you here. So before we jump into this whole doula thing and talking about what you guys are doing, which is just absolutely amazing to me and such a new and wonderful thing. Tell me about those letters, because there's some letters in front of your name and some letters after your name, and some of them I don't even know what they mean. So
Thank you. So the letters in front of my name are Reverend. I'm an ordained minister in the Presbyterian denomination. I am also a certified professional life coach, and I am a certified death doula. And in 2021, I became a board certified chaplain. So all of those letters are related to different components of the skill sets that I bring to the work now as an end-of-life doula.
Oh, fabulous. So multidisciplinary kind of showing up here today. So death doula, for example, let's just jump right into that situation. So, when I heard about doulas, I always think of it at the beginning of life, kind of like a birth doula, somebody that's kind of, and again, from my ignorant way of looking at things, coaching you through that process and kind of being there for you and kind of, in a sense, being a guide. So talk to me about the other side of things. What's this death doula thing?
In very many ways, Sean, the components of what we do are parallel to what one would do as they were preparing for a birth. So as birth is not a medical event, also neither is death a medical event. Life begins at birth, ends at death, and both are part of a continuum of a cycle of life. So in America, especially, there is a cultural distaste around talking about death, end of life. You've probably heard people say, oh, we don't talk about that in our family. If you talk about it, it will make it happen. But much as families prepare for the celebration and for the event of a birth, end-of-life doulas or death doulas help clients and their loved ones prepare to the best of their ability for a death that is peaceful, undramatic, comfortable as possible, because the components of end of life or death are about far more than symptom and pain management. There's a lot that goes on in the hearts and spirits of individuals that have nothing to do with physical pain. There are logistics questions. There are hard conversations that might need to be had. And death doulas come alongside clients and we walk them through the process gently and specifically for their situation.
And I tell you, we definitely have a lot of sociological and psychological pressure on this situation. Even with me, I deal with end-of-life issues as an elder law attorney literally on a daily basis. People are dying on me all the time. And I've been doing that for 35 years. So you'd think I would get a little bit more used to it and talking about the whole issue. But when I was talking with you this morning and I said death doula, it still gives me a little bit of I don't know, just something inside me. It's just almost hard for me to say death doula because I'm using the D word and I'm not talking about doula. So in this situation, death doula, when I first heard of it, isn't this hospice? How does this differ from hospice? And what role are you playing versus what hospice does? Because to me, when I roll into this situation, I thought that's what hospice does, is kind of help through that transition process. So how are you different?
So the fact is that today, in this day and age, with what's happening in our healthcare system, hospice is a component of healthcare that is not about curing anything.
Right.
Hospice deals with pain and symptom management, the physical components of what's happening for a person. And to a certain extent, they are required to address the psychological or spiritual needs of a patient and family. The reality, Sean, is that because of how things have shifted in the healthcare world, oftentimes the people in the hospice team who are charged with supporting the spiritual, the emotional, the psychological components of what's happening for the person, they are not as able to perhaps devote the kind of time that a family might want to have with their loved one. So, what we do is very much hand in glove with hospice. My business partner, Kari Barcome, is a licensed clinical social worker. She and I both worked as providers in hospice companies for many, many years. So we know very well the texture and the nature of what the hospice teams provide. And they provide wonderful services.
Of course,
What
yes.
we bring is that extra layer, that extra attention, where we are not pressed with any time constraints, for example, and we are able to literally customize care for each individual situation. Now, hospice teams will tell you they are not cookie cutters either,
Right.
and that's 100% true. Of course, it can't be. And what we bring really works hand in glove with hospice teams or with palliative care or with any other layer of medical care that is happening for a client.
All right, I see that. And so I have heard that hospice in itself has been evolving over time as well. And there's some, and I'm going to be maybe a little sensitive issue, but there's a kind of a business component with hospice, and how they're compensated through through Medicare, for example, or through the government. And that there has been, I've heard at least, that there's been a tightening up of how Medicare and hospice are working together. And that if you're not, and again, I'm just going to use silly words here, if you're not actively dying, I mean, like, you know, death is right around the corner, we're happening right now, and you somehow start to get better or plateau in your process of your exit, that hospice may no longer be able to help you in those circumstances. And I'm not using all the right words, but maybe you could help clarify that for me.
Sure. And I am not going to speak for any hospice agency in particular, but as you're speaking under umbrella terms, we
Just,
can use
yeah, broad
umbrella
terms. Yeah, I'm
terms,
not
broad
picking at, but
terms.
just broad, just
So,
the whole hospice space in general. So,
yes, it's no secret, Sean, that what has happened in hospice have been significant changes in terms of how hospice is required to manage the time of their providers. So again, clients and patients of hospice are being constantly monitored by the
right,
hospice team to see if they remain eligible. And there are things that hospice providers look for that allow a patient to remain eligible. Many of those things are medically related,
right,
and some of them are not. But there are components that of the holistic care that the interdisciplinary team of any hospice looks at. And sometimes they cannot find those sweet spots that will allow them to continue to care for someone under the hospice benefit. And that is the perfect time for us to be able to come in, offer that extra support. Again, not medical support, but if a hospice provider decides that a patient and family do not need their specific services anymore, then that client would revert back to a primary care provider or whatever provider they chose to revert back to. And end of life doulas can come in and literally help to hold up the situation while the family is adjusting, readjusting, recalibrating what they're doing for their loved one.
see, I understand. I understand. So your organization, and there's actually a name to it. I probably did not introduce you in the beginning and clarify that, but it's Sunset Doulas. Is that correct? Of Pinellas, Sunset Doulas of
Sunset
Pinellas.
doulas, Sunset doulas Pinellas, yes.
Okay, Sunset Doulas Pinellas. So give me, if you would, kind of like a good kind of typical kind of client, like an example of a person that would interface, you know, with Sunset Doulas. You know, when would they do that? And then kind of walk us through what you guys, you know, would be doing for them in a kind of a use case scenario.
there are several uh, average kinds of components of clients. So one of the components that we find that we're being able to be really helpful in is especially for loved ones who have no family in Florida, for example. So a client will, let's say they've been treated for congestive heart failure, which is
Right.
a common ailment among older persons, and they've been living independently, and suddenly things start to change medically, and they need more help or more care, and doctors are telling them there really isn't too much more that we can do to cure your physical illness. That is when we would come in and help to support the conversations that need to happen about making referrals for increased care, whether they want to stay in their home, whether they want to move into a different kind of a living situation, whether it's time to have a conversation about hospice, to bring hospice in, and helping to collaborate and coordinate with the family who might be in Michigan or Ohio or somewhere. I mean, you see this in your work
Of
all the
course, yeah,
time,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Out of state caregivers or family members, presents another layer of challenge to dealing with the issues my clients are dealing with. So I agree.
the other prevalent and growing rapidly population is persons who are recently diagnosed with or living with dementia.
Right.
And dementia is that broad umbrella term that covers
Yep.
lots of different
Yep.
specific diagnoses. But we have supported clients who have had dementia, who have been living independently, probably not safely, but living
Yep.
independently. And we've been able to come in and help to collaborate and coordinate the journey and the process so that they got the support that they needed, the resources that they needed, and that they were able to approach an end of life experience with as little drama as possible, with as little crisis as possible. See, as you know, Sean, when people are unable to advocate for themselves and speak up for themselves in a hospital situation, they can quickly get sucked into the system, which means that they are now at the mercy of the providers in the hospital who are charged with making sure that they are discharged
Right.
safely to somewhere. And that somewhere can be a nursing home, it could be back home with services, back home with hospice. But as you know, in the hospital, those conversations happen rapid fire.
Yep. Yeah.
And oftentimes clients are not able to process what's happening. So we can come along and we love to come alongside people and help them to be extra eyes and ears, to help them to know the right questions to ask and to support them in making the choices that are their choices,
Right.
that are for what they want to have happen, what their wishes are, and not to be railroaded into a situation where they may find themselves very unhappy.
Boy, I tell you, I'm listening to you talk, and it's a very interesting parallel thing in worlds that we live in. I'm doing exactly the same kind of guidance for my clients when we're dealing with public benefits and Medicaid and placement, nursing home and home care, assisted living care. And I always say to them, I said, listen, there's no course on this. You're not supposed to know how to do all of this. This is why you do need to reach out and see and find somebody that can help guide you through the process. And one of the things that I tell them, and this may be relevant in your world as well, is that one of the scariest things in the world is a dark room. When you walk into a dark room, there's a lot of fear associated with that. There's a lot of unknown and a lot of uncertainty. But there's a real good way to solve that problem, and that is just turn the light on. But oftentimes you can't turn the light on by yourself. You need somebody with a flashlight to help guide you through that room. And so that's my role in my practice, is I'm a guide through this kind of minefield of new experiences. And boy, I tell you, I don't think there's a lot of books on dying either and how we're supposed to deal with all of this. And there's no instruction manual for sure. So just really super excited about what you guys are doing. And going to incorporate you more into my practice and this process for sure. But before we kind of jump out of the interview today, I'm really curious, how in the world did you arrive at doing this? I mean, did this come to you in a dream or something? What epiphany hit you and said, well, I want to do this. This sounds really cool. So is there a story? I'm sure there's got to be a story for that, right?
There's a story, and it's really quite simple. Kari Barcome and I worked in hospice companies for many, many years. And we have had conversation after conversation with clients and families where we have provided a tremendous amount of teaching and a tremendous amount of comfort. See, Sean, as you know, people just want to be heard.
Yeah, absolutely.
They want to be heard and they want to feel respected. And especially when they are facing the dark room and the unknown, people don't know what they don't know. None of us, we don't know what we don't know. And so Kari and I found over the years that we were skilled at guiding people and having difficult conversations and then providing them with comfort. And as Kari and I both stepped away from our roles as employees of hospice, we put our heads together and said, there is this new thing out there called an end-of-life doula, death doulas. In fact, there was recently a whole story about it on NPR, as I understand it.
Oh, really?
And so we looked into it and we went and got the certification and we started this company because we want so much to provide people with a comfortable space to be able to prepare as much as they possibly can for the natural end of life, whether that is under hospice care, whether it's at home care with other services coming in, whether they have loved ones or don't have loved ones. We want to be able to come alongside people to do more than hold their hand, but to really help them to feel in safe space as they approach that time. See, Sean, I'll end with this. In my experience, most people are less afraid of being dead than they are of getting dead.
That's a well put. The being dead part, I'm okay with. It's just that process leading up to it that scares the bejesus out of me.
It's the getting dead
Yeah.
part, right? So to the extent that we can come along and help them process and mitigate some of those fears and what they look like, that's the gift. And for the clients that we have served, their loved ones and family members have been so thankful because we provided a cushion to come alongside them and help them to be able to face the reality in a very gentle way.
Got it. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Now, just as kind of a closer here, let's say I'm watching this video and it's like, wow, that's very interesting, and I need to know more about this situation, or I want to contact you guys because I need you. I think I didn't realize I needed you, but I need you guys now. This could be very helpful. What's the best way for somebody to reach out and talk with you guys?
The best way is to go to the website, sunsetdoulaspinellas.com. There are links there to contact us. There's a phone number there to contact us, email, however you can message us there, and we will get back to you as quickly as we can, usually in under 24 hours is our commitment. And just get more information. There's no harm in having a conversation and just to learn more about what we offer. And if our flavor of support is a good fit for you, it could open doors to areas that you never even considered before.
Awesome. Very, very, very awesome. Great. And Les, I just want to thank you for appearing with me today on our little show and sharing this wonderful knowledge, getting the word out there of this opportunity for people to help shine a light into some dark space. I'm Sean Scott. Thank you for listening. If you need more information from us and what we do, you can always reach out and touch to us at flmedicaid.com. And again, thank you for watching, everyone.